Hello, hello, hello to our YouTube audience. Thank you so much for being here tonight, y'all. Oh, well, not tonight. Sorry, it's today. Not tonight. I got to get used to this, to talking about service as it is in the night versus in the day. So because it is Saturday morning, we we have joined today for our gathering on Saturdays, as we will continue to moving forward. So if you can, please do me a favor and like, share, and subscribe anything that you would like to do to engage our YouTube channel. If you are a visitor, this is your first time, you can do us a favor by texting the gathering to 42828. To get the service link to join the Zoom live. There is a pre-portion that goes on before we stream our sermon. But if you would like to engage and be a part of that, you can do that by texting the gathering to 42828. And that will be in the description below as well. But thank you and welcome. Thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to talk about push the pillars. We're dealing with the story of Samson, the judge who is governing the what is Samson governing? Samson is governing the nation of Israel at this time, particular time. He's one of the many judges in the Old Testament that is governing the nation of Israel. And as a result of governing the nation of Israel, he is responsible for defending them, and he is in this war. I'm just kind of giving you a brief overview. He's in this war with the Philistines, and he falls in love with this woman, and her name is Delilah. And as a result of their relationship, Samson is this really, really huge figure, both physically and figuratively in the community. And he's kind of, in a sense, like a Hercules of some sorts, or this is what he represents, right? Mythically and literally. He's this really, really giant guy and has been gifted by God with a massive amount of strength. He has strength beyond the strength of 1,000 men, right? I think that's what the text says. Maybe it says something else, but something along those lines. He has like the strength of thousands of men. He can destroy armies with his own hands. Like, he's that strong. And the secret to his strength is actually his hair. It's so funny because when people ask me, why don't you cut your hair off? I tell them it's the secret to my strength. For real. What y'all don't know is the strength that I might display in the world actually came from the lessons that I learned growing my hair. So I kind of loosely connect with the story of Samson in a way. But I want to read this portion of the narrative because now at this time, what we're dealing with is Samson has fallen in love with this woman. She is obviously she's a Philistine woman, and so there obviously there's tension between that, and she wants to basically capture him and what's the word I'm looking for? She wants to take his power away, essentially, so that the Philistines can win the war. Because if they kill Samson, then they're able to destroy the children of Israel, and God's not having that. So she ends up seducing him in some way. She gets the secret. She tells the guards, okay, he told me the secret to his strength is his hair. She seduces him. He falls asleep in her lap. She calls the guards in. Oh, sneaky something. She called the guards in to cut his hair off. And as a result of not having his hair anymore, he's not strong. So they're able to seize him and lock him up, put him in chains, and they turn him into a slave. And so he's ooh, this is just a beautiful story. They turn him into a slave. He's having to push, and do slave work and slave labor because he's not strong anymore. But tell somebody, look at your neighbor and tell them, just because you cut my hair off don't mean it won't grow back. See, y'all already got me stirred up because this story is so beautiful. Let me read this. I've given you the pre portion. Let me give you the actual scripture now as it is written. We're at this part of the narrative. So Samson is a slave, and they're displaying him as if he's an actual slave. So when they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple. Mind you, they're at this big gathering now, right? And he's I'll have to tell y'all about this, but back in the day, there was like this thing called like death by theater. They would kill people. They would kill slaves in very creative ways. The Romans in particular had this thing called death by theater, where they would literally make a slave partake in a scene. It was like a theater scene. They would make a slave basically partake in a scene where they were acting like they were dying, but the slave would actually be killed in the scene because they were supposed to be killed. So they would do it by theater because it was entertaining to the masses. So this is essentially, I think, what's going on here. Samson is being perused around in this temple and kind of displayed as this slave, really, really torturous and violent, right? They're perusing him around as a slave, and it's entertainment for the rest of the people, for all the folks. So when they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant, who held his hand, "Put me where I can feel the pillars that support this temple, so that I may lean against them." Now the temple was crowded with men and women. As I said, all the rulers of the Philistines were there, and the roof were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more. Let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." That's the other thing. When they captured him, they blotted out his eyes so he couldn't see. So he was definitely a slave. Not only did he lose his strength, but they blotted his eyes so he can't see. And he's definitely a slave. He's dependent. That's why he needed someone to lean him on the pillars. They blot out his eyes. Let me get revenge for taking my strength and for blotting out my eyes. Then Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other. Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than while he lived. And Samson killed a lot of people while he lived. Now, we're not even talking about the violence of killing and murder and all that stuff. I can't even deal with that yet. I'm just dealing with the figurative pieces of this narrative. I think Michael would appreciate this type of writing because it's kind of like this literary approach to something that probably did happen, but not as factual, more so kind of creative writing in a sense. And to the end, of course, as we know, the Jews are writing in a particular way to talk about their history, right? Then his brothers and his fathers, the whole family, went down to get him. They brought him back and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah, his father. He had led Israel for 20 years. I'm talking about push the pillars. Push the pillars. Push the pillars. Push the pillars. I was in a conversation this week with a few of my friends, and they're all, some of them are lawyers and they're all doing their PhDs and they're super, super smart. I like to hang out with smart people because I realize I'm not the smartest cookie in the bunch. And when I'm not the smartest cookie in the bunch, that means I can learn something. So I like to talk to my friends about different things. A lot of them, as we talked about last week, are pessimists. Pessimists means they're not like, you talk about optimism and pessimism. I consider myself an optimist. Pessimist more so because they would much rather see the system, the entire system, the American system, all of the things that are so wrong with our society. They would rather see it all burned down. They'd rather see it all burned down. They would rather see it all collapse. They would rather see temples go down. They would rather see all this stuff happen because there just is no way, right, for you to pull out or extract possibility or positivity, if you will, out of a system that does not lend itself to that or was not founded on those principles. It's my first point. You cannot expect a system designed to oppress to change its ways for the better of the people. That's why we need God, right? That's my perspective on pessimism and optimism. And here's the situation at hand. I think the genius of the narrative of Samson is that what we're dealing with is first of all, how do I want to explain this? We're dealing with a system that is designed automatically to begin with seizing and domination and control and capture. It's this fetishization, if you will, or this occupation, this preoccupation, this overwhelming concern and desire and commitment to the idea that somebody has to be a slave, or somebody has to be captured, or somebody has to be oppressed, or somebody has to be down. This is what we are dealing with in our current culture, and this is what we have been dealing with as human beings since we have been on this earth. This idea, fighting this active idea and this perspective that somebody always has to be oppressed, that there's domination that needs to happen, that in order for a world to function, somebody's got to be up here and somebody's got to be down here. And so be it. If it's you up here, lucky you. If it's you down here, what was you, right? But whoever it is, somebody's got to be dominated, somebody's got to be oppressed, somebody's got to be down, somebody's got to be under. And as a result, right, it's this preoccupation with needing Samson to perform for their entertainment as a slave. What would happen if we actually lived in a world where people did not desire to enslave other people? I don't even know if we would be here right now. The reason is because the world as we know it has been shaped by those very factors. And just as we continue to engage those principles and continue to rehearse those rituals and continue to engage those practices in the same ways that they have been done against us, the world will continue to progress in that same direction. The only way that we will be that we can undo what has been done is probably for it to be destroyed. I completely understand, but my optimistic perspective will not allow me to just let stories like this sit idle without imparting the wisdom and the idea and the purpose and presence of a God. The reason I cannot sit still with pessimistic perspectives is because God is still present. A God for me says that even while we're dealing with capitalism, even while we're dealing with oppressed systems, even while we're dealing with the nature of battling our own insecurities and humanity and bad decisions and all this stuff about nations, about governments, and even within the self, even while all that stuff is going on, God is still present. And that is the genius for me of what it means to be Christian, to have a faith practice, to think theologically, to have that mindset. Even while all of this stuff is going on around me, I'm still present and at peace because I know God is still here. That's my belief, right? Hope in the system will always fail, but faith in God is what prevails. That's exactly what goes on, right? I think Samson is also a beautiful example of what it means. You have no strength. Your eyes are gone. You are oppressed. You're enslaved. You are captive. You have been deceived by love is what you thought it was, right? Now that you have been deceived and you have nothing. And you're being paraded around as a slave to your enemies. Samson leans up against his own fear, his own trauma, and he says to God, strengthen me just once more. Let me with one blow get revenge for my two eyes, oh God. Fill me up with power that I gave away. Even the decisions that I made against myself, even the choices that I made against myself, even the desires I made against myself and my people, God, forgive me in this one moment and renew my strength, the strength I let go. Just as, right, some of the texts, some texts you'll see even say that as he was leaning against the post, his hair started to grow back. Samson's hair starts to grow back and he starts to get the strength that he lost after making the decisions that he made, which is so beautiful because even there is no decision that you can make against yourself that God cannot reverse. That is the beauty of understanding who God is and what God's role is in our lives, what God desires to do. God is not out. This is, I got to get this whole perspective that God is out to get you, or that you like holiness or hell. I saw something on YouTube the other day talking about the legacy of holiness. So now y'all are at the point now where y'all actually want to have conversations about the fact that it's a perspective of living, but it is not the end all be all or the only thing that is. calling it a legacy means that you have a particular framework for thinking about and a way of extracting or extrapolating principles and points and ways of living that are more so cultural and not bound by law. These are things y'all decided to do, not something that was mandated by God. Let's just talk about it, okay? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with holiness, but what I am saying is let's admit and let's be real about the fact that these are cultural perspectives, not particularly just not specifically things that are commanded of all people, of all generations, of all things. No. These are specific to y'all, and this is what y'all want to do. But there is no decision that you can make that is against you that God is not able to get you out of. All right. Now he says, place me against the pillars. Place me against the pillars. I am speaking prophetically to you today. Those of you who are listening under the sound of my voice, and I got to wrap up soon, but those of you who are listening under the sound of my voice, the power that God is going to give you to do the work that you are going to do, God is not just going to cause you to pull the system down at the top. God is not going to just cause you, or give you the space to do that work from outside, but God is going to place you inside. And the work that you desire to do, everything that you desire to come down, you will do it by the pillars, the foundations of it. That is how the work gets done. That is how the work is going to become transformative. That is how we move forward into the future. You're not just going to be pushing a building over. You're not just going to be networking and trying to get people's relationships and trying to figure out how to get in. No. Sometimes you will be oppressed in the system that you're trying to dismantle. And when you are in those positions, even when you pray prayers like this, God will give you the strength to tear systems down by the pillars. You will place your hands on the pillars of whatever. You will place your hands on, I speak prophetically. You will place your hands on the pillars of capitalism. You will place your hands on the pillars of oppression. You will place your hands on the pillars of LGBTQ exclusion. You will place your hands on the pillars of all of the oppressive systems and violence against women and trans folks and children and gun violence and laws and policies. You will place your hands on the pillars of these things that are found that are built on these foundations, and you will press with all your might in order to see it come down. Now the problem is that yes, you may have to go with the system, and if that's what it means, if that's what it means that you have to die with the system that you will see, then so be it. This is what we've dedicated our lives to. But the genius and the beauty of a future that is forged out of this narrative is that all of the children of Israel from this point on will never have to deal with the Philistines again. Please beware, for the Egyptians that you see today, you will never see again. These things will have to happen, and folks will be empowered with strength to destroy foundations and temples that have been built up and erected on violent principles. But that is the beauty of this narrative. Place me by the pillars. God will empower you to tear the system down by its pillars. Sovereign Lord, remember me. And even when you feel disconnected from God, God is still there. Even when you don't know how to pray anymore, God is still present. I feel the Holy Ghost. Even when you don't know how to sing the song you used to sing, when you feel like you have lost all hope, when you feel like you have lost your mind, when you feel like you have lost your peace, the presence and the Spirit of God is always going to prevail. It's always going to be present. When Celie has gotten to her last song, when she can't sing no more, she's at the point now where she's got to look up to God, and she's got to get a revelation from God at that moment to say, I am still here. And if it's nothing but the grace of God, that's exactly what it is. God's grace allowing me to be present, to be alive, to live, to realize I am not dead. Therefore, I still have opportunity. What did Bishop Yvette Flinders say to her mother? Her mother said, I don't know how I'm going to move into a future. She said her mother was old at this point. She said, I've been living a deceived lie. I have been rehearsing and rehearsing a form of holiness all of my life. And now you mean to tell me that everything I have believed my entire life, everything I have participated in my entire life was a lie. What am I going to do now? I'm old. I don't have a life lived. And she looked at her mother dead in the face and she said, Mama, you still alive, which means you still have an opportunity. You still have a choice. You still have a chance to move into a future. It may not be that long and you may not be able to outlive the years you've already lived, but at least you can live from this moment on. At least you can live from this point on. At least you still have life in your body to live just a little bit of life, get a taste of what it means to be free, just a little bit long enough to see yourself to the end of your life. And I am here to tell you and to remind you today that even though you may not be able to outlive what you have already done, at least you can still take the life you have left in your hands and keep living. You're still alive and God is not done with you. Sovereign Lord, remember me. And when you feel disconnected, when you are not connected with God anymore, when you feel like all hope is lost, God is still present, bracing himself against the pillars. Right hand, left hand, pushed with all his might, came down the temple and rulers and all the people, thus killed many more than he did while he lived. If you know anything about Samson, you know he killed a lot of people. But the beauty, and it's also the tragedy, right? Because we're talking about murder, irony, right? Murder when we're talking about gun violence too. Violence in this sense, I don't want to deal with the practical application. I think I'm dealing with the more figurative elements of this type of violence. More people in that one moment than when he was alive. So many armies and battles he fought. And in this one moment, he transformed the trajectory of the children of Israel. They could have been captured, continued to be oppressed, right? But here he is in this one moment. He shuts all of it down by submitting to the authority and the power of Almighty God. And I am telling you, even if you get to the point where you have to make a decision like this, God will cause the work of your hands to be so much greater in your passing than ever was in your living. If it means that you have come to a point, and I've even had to say this to myself because I think about people like Malcolm X, and I think about Dr. King, and I think about all these people who die in the struggle of trying to get something moved or trying to make a change happen. I was talking to Jeremy about this too. The hope is that God will cause the work of your hands, and maybe even that one moment, to be so substantive that it supersedes all of the work that you have ever done in your entire life. I don't particularly like the idea that I might have to die on a Calvary cross one day. But if it means, oh God, that this is what needs to happen in order for the system to come down by its pillars, please cause the work of my hands to go far beyond anything that I have ever done in my living. Bless my hands so much so that systems will transform in my passing in ways that they could have never done in my living. My hope is that I don't have to die with it, but if I must, let the work of my hands be so transformative, oh God, that people and nations will be able to be liberated and caused to see you in a new light, to see you to see your grace, to see your favor, to see your power, to see your ability, and will also learn what it means to call on your name. Not just for me, I'd rather live as an example of what happens when you are in an oppressive system. If it means that I got to die with the system, then so be it. But Lord, please allow the work of my hands to speak for you, to speak to you, and to serve as testimony to what it is that you can do and you will do and have done before. on behalf of those whom you love. This is my prayer for you, friends. This is my prayer for you. My prayer for you is that you will live a life so well lived that God will honor everything you have done. But even if it causes you to pass, if you must leave this earth, in a moment of fighting for justice, in a moment of fighting for liberation, in a moment of fighting for the peace of somebody's life, that God will cause the work of your hands to be so great that in your passing, it supersedes anything you could have ever done in your living. God, I'm grateful tonight. Well, to this morning, got to get used to that. We are grateful today for what you are causing the work of our hands to do. We are grateful today for the opportunity that you have given us to be alive and present here. And we will forever give your name all the glory, honor, and praise as you continue to move us into the future. We are thankful with great expectation for what you are going to do with our lives. In the mighty and matchless name of Jesus, I'm thankful and grateful for your presence and your spirit here too, my friends, and I'm praying for you on your behalf, with you and for you. If you have any prayer requests or praise reports or anything you would like to, any comments, feedback, anything, engage with me in conversation over the comments on YouTube. For those of you who are watching through YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in today. This is our underground gathering, our worship gathering. It's a pleasure to have you. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and be sure to connect with us next week. You'll see us next week as well. And so I want to wish you all a wonderful, this is for the YouTube audience. I want to wish you all a beautiful, beautiful day, evening, whenever, however you're watching this. If you're watching this on the way to work or a leisurely activity, whatever it is, thank you so much for tuning in. Please come back to see us next week, and do feel free to share this message with whoever it is that you would like to. And so I will go ahead and bid you all a wonderful evening. Talk to you soon. Well, a wonderful